Good evening to all of you once again. I think we have given 10 minutes for all who are a little late to join. And my voice is clear to all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Let me introduce myself. I'm Commodore Pradeep Karunatilaka. I'm working as a Director Naval Electrical and Electronics in Naval Headquarters, and also I'm holding the appointment of Head of Cybersecurity. So I'm into electrical as well as many other fields. So I thought of doing this lecture for you all, which will be benefited for your B paper. And the lecture plan is I'll be conducting through these slides. In fact, in normal way of my conducting is I would like to have interaction session so that it's very effective way I can handle the questions and answers. However, because of the Zoom, and we will restrict our questions to be posted at the last. Plus, I have given my email. Whoever wants, they can post their question to the email. So I'm glad that I can help you out. And the aim of this presentation is not only to empower the writing of your B paper, but in your day-to-day life, as a leader, as a manager, as an engineer, I hope that it will be effective for you all to carry out your even general duties. So let us see how best we can move forward with this presentation. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, by now you all have completed more than 8 lectures out of this lecture series. I just, for your benefit, I have just listed down all these lectures. So we are today into engineer as a manager. And I can see some of the lectures like ISL Code of Ethics and Engineer in the Society. These, all the lectures are interrelated to my topic. That's why I have listed. I think whatever you have learned from the other lectures also will be benefited to this lecture. The things that you will be learning from this lecture also interrelated to some other lectures like engineer as a social leader, even the code of ethics as a technical leader. All these things are leader, manager, all these things are overlap each other in some or other situations. Right. Let us first identify few key words like who's an engineer. Already, I think you know about this through the ISL Code of Ethics, the lecture, and then who is a manager is the key area of our today's lecture. Then we have to identify who we are. And finally, we have to identify ourselves, who am I? So without knowing who am I, we cannot move forward. Let us see how to identify through this managerial aspect. Who is an engineer? So first of all, let us see what is engineering. Engineering is an activity essential for meeting the needs of people, economic development, and the provisions of services to society. Also involves the purposeful application of mathematical and natural sciences and body of engineering knowledge, technology, and techniques. Further elaborating, engineering seeks to produce solutions of which the effects are predicted to the greatest degree possible in often certain contexts. While bringing benefits, engineering activity has potential adverse and consequences. So thus, engineer has to be consider all these aspects. Like, then the engineering, therefore, we can consider as it must be carried out responsibly and ethically, and also use available resources efficiently. Be economic, safeguard health and safety, be environmentally sound and sustainable, manage risk throughout the entire life cycle of a system. Therefore, engineer is the one who perform all these duties. I hope, can anyone tell this engineering aspect has been learned through the code of ethics, isn't it? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let me further recall your memory. So engineering practitioners, typical engineering activity requires several roles, including those of engineer, engineering technologist, and engineering technician, and recognized as a professional registration categories. Okay, these roles are defined by their distinctive competencies and their levels of responsibility to the public. A degree of overlap also there, as I said. So all these three categories, engineer, engineering technologist, and the engineering technician, they have their role even overlap up to a certain degree. These distinctive competencies, together with their educational underpins, are defined in the publication you all must have gone through by now, Graduate Attributes and Professional Competencies by IEA. So who are the engineering practitioners? The development of an engineering profession in any of the categories is an ongoing process with important identified stages. First stage is the attainment of an accredited educational qualifications, the graduate stage, which you have already obtained. The fundamental purpose of engineering education is to build a knowledge-based attributes to enable the graduate to continue learning and to proceed to formative development. Formative development that will develop the competencies required for independent practice. Therefore, the second stage is following a period of formative development is a professional registration. There are two categories, like as a graduate as well as developing the competence formative development. The fundamental purpose of formative development is to build on the educational base to develop the competences required to independently practice, in which the graduate works with engineering practitioners and progress from an assisting role to taking more individual and team responsibility until competence can be demonstrated at the level required for registration. So I hope you understand, once registered, the practitioner must maintain the expand competence. Like after the graduate stage, you are learning these competencies, like what you are appearing for the B paper and getting through these things, plus with your experience is building the formative development so that it will be able to practice as an engineer. Several international accords provide for recognition of graduates of accredited programs of each signatory by the remaining signatory. Again, I'm just brushing through your memory. You know what is the Washington Accord provides for mutual recognition of programs accredited for the engineer track, whereas Sydney Accord provides for the engineering technologist, and the Dublin Accord provides for the engineering technicians. So when you go through the document, all these three accords provide all the requirements and basic has been listed out for their benefits. Now let us see who are the engineering practitioners. Each jurisdiction may define performance indicators, that is, actions on the part of the candidate that demonstrate competence. For an example, a design competence may be evidenced by the following performance. Let us see one example, like design engineer. Identify and analyze the design planning requirement and draw up detailed requirements specification. Then synthesis, arrange potential solutions to problem approaches to project execution. Evaluate potential approaches to meet requirements and their possible impacts. Fully develop design of a selected option and then produce design documentation for implementation. So why I put this slide at the beginning, so as an engineering practitioner, the lecture today is the engineering management or engineer as a manager. So when you go through this example from 1 to 5, you see from identifying and analyzing the design plan by a designer in his profession. So he is completing up to the produce design documentation for implementation. This requires two aspects. What is it? Can anybody tell what are those two aspects? Hello? There are two aspects that you have to consider while developing this design competence. It's related to your topic today. Am I audible to you all?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One aspect is the engineering. The other aspect is the management. When you go through this example, you know you need the engineering aspects to develop these designs as well as the managerial aspects to up to the product design documentation for implementation. Throughout the 5 steps, you require these two aspects. Okay. Who is a manager? Just think of yourself. You know a lot of managers, like so many managers. You have heard this word very well. Production manager, then so many other managers. So what is their role? What is their task? What is their managerial skills? Like if it's a production manager, if it is some other manager, if it is a business manager, is it all equal? Or is it different? These are the questions that you need to, these are the roles that you need to think about yourself. Then come to, you have to think about who you are as an engineer. Out of these managers, out of these engineers, who am I? Whether I'm an engineer alone or whether I'm a manager. So these are the questions to be asked from yourself. Let us see, move forward, and at the end you will ask yourself and you will have the answer. Engineering management is the generic management function of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, applied together with engineering knowledge in context, including the management of projects, construction, operation, maintenance, or businesses. This generic management functions, whether it is engineering management or any other management, when you consider the key management functions as per the theory, there are 4 categories. There's a planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Those are the basics of management. We call it as the key management functions. These are involved in even the engineering management. Then coming on to the engineering fundamentals, a systematic formulation of engineering concepts and principles based on mathematical and natural sciences for support applications. So then the engineering problem. Engineering problem is the problem that exists in any domain that can be solved by the application of engineering knowledge and skills and generic competencies. Brushing through your memory with all those things, now we will step into the scope of management. Why management? We have to ask why management is required. If we have many resources, human resources and materials, men and materials, then do you need the management? Yes, still you need. But more or less, we our management skills, our management knowledge is applied. More important when the resources are limited. As you know, the whole world resources are limited. Then organizations deal with uncertainty and unexpected events. So all these contingencies has to be met. So the management has to be in place. Managerial approach has to be in place in order to tackle with all these uncertainties. Then cope with diverse and far-reaching challenges like ever-advancing technology. If you don't have management, so how do we cope up with the ever-advancing technology? Likewise, these are the importance of management requirements. The shift towards new ways of working enabled by technology puts additional demand on today's management. As you all know, more than the traditional way, because of the technological advancement, today we need advanced way of managing as well. In the new world of work, managers need a new approach that relies less on command and control and more on coordination and communication. Not like in traditional way, where the king's time, they have used every aspect through the command and control. Nowadays, it has been diluted and it has less relies on the command and control, but more rely on the coordination and communication, because the outputs and outcomes expected are much more effective when it comes to the coordination and communication. Basically, creating a cohesive environment throughout individuals, groups, and organizations. That is where our managerial approaches has to be addressed. The field of management is undergoing a revolution that asks managers to do more with less, engage all employees, not limiting to certain employees, but we have to get hold of all the employees, see change rather than stability as the nature of things. So you have to move forward. So we have to change for good. So this is a part of engineering and management aspect. Inspire vision and cultural values that allow people to create a truly collaborative and productive workplace. So this is part of management. So without your men, you cannot do anything. So man behind the machine, we call it. So therefore, we have to envisage the vision, inspire it, and the cultural values where the whole world today looking for the values that we have to inculcate in certain subcultures within the organization, within the groups, within the companies, or wherever. This is the part of manager's job. So therefore, manager should be able to get hold of all the employees up to the right direction by inculcating all these values. It is not an easy task because every individual is different. Every group is different. Driving all these individuals and groups towards one goal is not an easy task. So manager has to be skillful, knowledgeable with all these attributes developed and driving through his leadership to achieve the goals. His approach differs significantly from a traditional mindset that emphasizes tight top-down control. As I said, in the traditional approach, it is boss control type, top-down approach. Employees separation and specialization and management by impersonal measurement and analysis. In the history, it was like that. The employee separation, then the impersonal measurement. But making a difference as a manager today and tomorrow requires integrating solid, tried, and true management skill. It has to be an integrated approach of all elements of the organization. So it should be solid and tried and true management skill with innovative approaches, which emphasizes the human touch, enhance flexibility, and engage employees' hearts and minds as well as their bodies. Let me now discuss about the management definitions. Stone and Freeman has told the process of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling the work of organizations, members, and of using all available organizational resources to reach all organization goals. As we have discussed the key management functions, there are 4: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. These 4 are the basic pillars of any management process. Ladies and gentlemen, be very mindful. These are the 4 pillars of building any management process, the basic pillars: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. What is this organization? It's a 2 or more people who work together in a structured way to achieve a specific goal or set of goals. Organization brings together knowledge, people, and raw materials to perform tasks no individual could do alone. So therefore, management definitions, again, as per the briefing, management is a set of activities, including, again, he is also telling planning and the decision making, organizing, leading, and controlling. He has added another part as decision making, directed and at an organization resources. What are the resources? Human, financial, physical, and informational. So he has brought 2 aspects, like not only man and material, but the information, which is very important to today's context, with the aim of achieving organizational goals in an effective and efficient manner. So these 2 keywords are we use often, but it is very important. You must know what are the meaning of these 2 words: in an effective and efficient manner. If you don't control, if you don't plan, organize, lead, and control, and if your output is not effective or efficient, then it is in vain. Therefore, a proper managerial skills, engineer with a proper managerial skill with drive is aimed towards the right goal with effectiveness and efficiency. Okay. What is effectiveness? Just read. As per the Peter Drucker, it is the ability to determine appropriate objectives, doing the right things. Then efficiency is doing the things right. The ability to minimize the use of resources in achieving organizational objectives. So here the key word is minimize the use of resources. So resources are scarce nowadays in the world. So therefore, you have to focus on any of your project, any of your approach, these 2 aspects. So that is the management aspects. So principles of combination of effectiveness and efficiency. Let us see in this diagram. So if it is effective and efficient, so you will drive and thrive through the organization and you will develop the organization. Then if it is effective but inefficient, then you can survive, but you will not thrive. Okay, still you can survive. Then you can identify when you are analyzing an organization's managerial aspects, whether it is thrive or survive based on these 2. Then if it is ineffective and efficient, it will die slowly. If it is ineffective and inefficient, it will die quickly. So these are the combination of this effectiveness and the efficiency. Mary Parker Follett has told the art of getting things done through people. This definition recognizes the role and importance of other people. Okay, it is not only the manager. So it is involvement of the other party. It is the art of getting things done through the other people, management. Then Peter Drucker again, he has told the job of managers is to give direction to their organization. So provide leadership and decide how to use organizational resources to accomplish goals. As a manager, he should be able to direct all the men and material by providing the leadership and decide how the organizational resources to accomplish the goals. Manager creates the right system, condition, and environment that enables organizations to survive and thrive beyond the tenure of any specific supervisor or manager. Beyond the tenure of any supervisor or manager. How he is doing this beyond the tenure of any specific supervisor or manager? Nowadays, the managers, so-called managers, they do certain things, but when the manager goes from the company or the organization, there's a gap. Okay, now right systems, conditions, and environment that enable to survive and thrive beyond the tenure. This is what is the requirement when you are practicing your management aspect as an engineer in any organization. It should be developed. There should be a process driven, focusing on the future. Even if you're not there, even the followers should be able to follow. So that is the best way of management approach. So a shared sense of purpose and pride, a passion for change. He should have the open-mindedness, which I will explain again, and willingness to take risk. Nowadays, it's very rare we can find risk takers. So managers always, they just generally rely upon to their whatever assigned task. They will not take risks. They will not see the challenges. So as a manager, he should be open-minded. He should be fearless to take risk. When I talk about the risk, it is a calculated risk. It is not taking the risk and collapsing. Be mindful, ladies and gentlemen. It is the calculated risk. Engineer, he has the knowledge and ability. Manager, he has the knowledge and ability to test all the factors and take this risk. So that is how it has to be developed towards the development of the organization. And an obsession with people and making them the best they can. So you have to make use of all the resources, especially human resources, to make the best use of them. So open-mindedness is described as the desire to see and experience new things. And open-mindedness consists of two factors. One is the cosmopolitan orientation, that it should be open-ended to accept the variety of people, variety of system, variety of cultures, not limiting to your own organization. So accommodating all these things, that is the cosmopolitan orientation, an attitude of openness to others, values and practices, and cultural flexibility. As I told, cultural flexibility, not limiting to your own culture or the own subculture. Some we have seen, they have built up own subculture. Every organization has some subculture. For an example, if you take the universities, if you compare the Sri Lankan university, are the all universities equal? No, they have different subcultures. Ruhuna has some subculture, Pera has some subculture, like Moratu has some subculture. While maintaining their subculture, they accept the other subcultures as well. Likewise, culturally, they have to be flexible. If somebody come from China, somebody come from India, they are different. Their way of approach is different. If a manager doesn't have that open-mindedness to accept that kind of subculture, how can he cooperate or coordinate with others. So therefore, as a leader, as a manager, as an engineer, you have to accept these subcultures. Even the engineer, they will have a way of approach of engineering design for our subcultures, but another subculture, it will be different. But both will drive towards the same direction. So it's in different routes. So you have to have cosmopolitan orientation as well as cultural flexibility, the willingness to experiment with different environments. So you have to have the open-minded inquiry, acquire information about trends, events, opportunities, and threats in the environment through scanning, direct experience, imitating, or problem-solving inquiries in a more thoughtful and systematic fashion, in a belief that all decisions start with an environment. So open-minded inquiry, this is the first question that you will be asking from yourself. If you are stepping to an organization, you will be asking yourself, I ask some question, who we are, who am I? So open-minded inquiry, like who we are. If you are and belong to an organization, you have to ask that question, who we are. Then acquire information about the trends, event, opportunities, and threats in the environment. So this is called the environmental analysis. In normal way, there are so many ways of approaching this to analyze the environmental aspects. Like if you consider, you must have learned about SWOT analysis, that is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you put a SWOT to that organization environment, totally you will analyze all the trends, events, opportunities, and threats. Okay, then by through scanning, direct experience, imitation. So going through my lecture at the latest stage, I will give you some tips or certain attributes that you need to study, you need to develop, you need to inculcate in your system so that you can practice. So apart from the SWOT, there's another high level of analysis system that is called PESTLM, political, economic, social, technological, and legal, and PESTL analysis we call. That is the high level of analysis in a that we can call it the strategic level or grand strategic level. Like when you are making the national policies, when you are helping to making national policies as an engineer in one day, you will utilize those measurement tools. Those are well recognized and well spelled out by the international bodies. And in order to step to that, we need to go the basic understanding of this managerial aspect. So the open-minded inquiry is very important as an individual as well as a group. So I told you the key management functions, the planning, the process of establishing goals and suitable course of action of achieving those goals. At the planning stage, we have to have the goals and suitable course of action for achieving those goals. Then organization is the second stage, reflects how the organization tries to accomplish the plan. Involves arranging, allowing allocation work, authority, and resource among organization's members so that they can achieve an organizational goal. So when I talk about this planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, it is very easy to say and done, but it involves, if you take a project, smaller project to the bigger project, you require this in a low scale to high scale. So whether the project is small or project is larger, these 4 steps follow: leading, creating a shared culture and values, communicating goals to employees throughout the organization, and influences employees with desire to perform the task-related activities of group members or an entire organization at a high level. Then controlling is the process of ensuring that actual activities conform to planned activities. There are certain tools which when you may have learned, like preparation of Gantt charts, allocation of resources, like when you are organizing the things, there are so many other tools, other theories, other approaches to carry out these 4 basic things in your project or in any of your project. So therefore, you must learn how to fit other aspects, other skills, other knowledge that you have gathered from other areas in order to drive towards proper management aspects and to achieve the goals through these 4 key aspects. Management skills is to perform these functions. Managers acquire a range of skills. One is the conceptual skills. What are the conceptual skills that a manager should have? That is the cognitive ability to see organization as whole and the relationship among its parts. You should be able to visualize your organization. As I said, first of all, you should be able to visualize you yourself as who you are, then as a group, then as an organization. This is the cognitive ability to see organization as a whole. That is means you have to see the big picture. This conceptual skills involves the manager's thinking, information processing, coordinating, integrating, and planning abilities. Even though it looks like very simple, this conceptual skill, the first step that it will come to your mind. This includes your knowledge as well as your experience. So from those things, you can build up all the conceptual skills so that there is the cognitive ability to see your organization as a whole, which is very important. If you don't see this, you will not be able to go through. Then human skills. What are the human skills? The ability to work with, understand, and motivate other people and individuals or groups. Then as workforce diversity, uncertainty, and societal turbulence increase, human skill become an even more important. The qualities of successful relationship buildings, trust is 2-dimensional. The trust is very important to a manager when firms exchange in situations where perceived outcome of trust is uncertain and vulnerable. Then the credibility. Firms believe that its partners stand by its word, fulfill promise, role obligations, and it's sincere. And also benevolence is the firm belief that its partner is interested in the firm's welfare, is willing to accept short-term dislocations, and will not take unexpected actions that would have a negative impact on the firm. Then is the commitment, an implicit or explicit pledge of relationship continuity between exchange partners. Commitment implies a willingness to make short-term sacrifices to realize long-term benefit. Commitment generally does not change often. So it is very important to know the exact definition of these words. Like we often in a day-to-day also we call about we are committed to this, we are committed to that. But as a manager and engineer, you should really know the real insight of this. It is a key distinct characteristic of commitment. It is that parties spontaneously and purposefully engage resources to maintain the relationship. There are many parties. Commitment provides a foundation for the development of social norms of governance, which are considered important mechanisms for regulating long-term relational exchanges and reducing opportunism. Like Commitment provides the foundation for the development of social norms of governance. So like that is that these all are interlinked, like trust and commitment, coordination, cooperation, communication. These are all linked together. So it will create a credibility to work with the partners in the future. Therefore, you will not be a failure as a manager. Let us now see relative skills needed for effective performance at different levels of management. We talk about the conceptual skills. Then certain relations, human relation skills and technical skills, as we have already spelled out in the document, which you have already obtained as a graduate, and you will be further developed through your career. Now this top management. This top management deals with conceptual skill. We have discussed the analysis in the big picture. You should be able to see the organization or the company or your group in a big picture. So we call it the strategic level. Top management deals with the strategic level, macro management. Then the middle level deals with the operational level. They deal with mostly human relation skills, because the key management functions, we have done the planning, then organizing. This here, organizing plus conducting and leading and controlling, it's towards this direction. So now we talk about the strategic approach, we talk about the operational approach, and then the lower element is the technical skills and all these required. This is the tactical level of operation. In any organization, you can divide your organization into these three categories. And as we have discussed, the ability to use the procedures, techniques, and knowledge of a specialized field, the technical skills. So these are the three main categories of any organization that has to be divided, and that the approach has to be practiced. Now, what happened in some organizations? What happened? The top management who are required to deal with conceptual skills, making plans, developing plans, and implementing plans. So they are involving with the lower level sometimes. What will happen? Then the macro level management require has step into the micromanagement, which there can be conflicts. So also there should not be isolatedly work, that top management should know what is happening in the lower management. The strategic level must know what is happening in the tactical level. But the link is this. So we have to have the communication, we have to have the communication skills developed, leadership skills developed, through develop your organization to work in this direction. But they must know what is happening here, but through these channels, chain of command we call. Okay. In certain, while developing experience and other practical aspect, the top management will know what is happening in the lower. There are measurements that they can know what is happening here. All they can put KPIs, they can measure, then feedback from the low elements, and also through the observations, the management get all the information. Nowadays, the information flow is there. When you study the subject organizational behavior, you will know they have hierarchical structure, they have cross functional structure like matrix organizations. So this is hierarchical order, but communication can be in the matrix. Okay. Now let us move on to managerial roles. What are the managerial roles? One is interpersonal roles. We call it a figurehead. He's a symbolic head, obliged to perform a number of routine duties of a legal or social nature. So this figurehead has been given some guideline from top, and he perform only the routine duties of a legal or social nature. He will not take any risk. He will stick to the legal or social nature. Then he is responsible for motivation and activation of subordinates, responsible for staffing, training, and associated duties. So it's very routine and regular function he will be doing. Then liaison, the maintain self-developed network of outside contacts and informers who provide favors and information. So he will work as the liaison with outside organization. Then the informational roles. Monitor. He seeks to receive wide variety of special information. Much of it is current to develop through thorough understanding of organization and environment. Emerge as nerve center of internal and external information about the organization. Then the disseminator. Transmit information received from outside or from other subordinates to members of the organization. Some information of factual, some involves interpretation and integration of the diverse values, position of organization influences. So disseminator has a very important role, not only to collect data, the collected data has to be factually true and tested, and it has to be processed. It has to be processed to come out with a proper interpretation. So only the true data processed properly will come out as a true interpretation, which can be called as valid and transmit correct information. Then the spokesman transmit this information, what the disseminator has done correctly, to the outside organization. And policies, actions, results. Serves as an expert on organizational industry. Then come to the important role at a decisional role. Entrepreneur. Searches organizations and its environments for opportunities and initiates improvement projects to bring about change. Supervises design and certain projects as well. Disturbance handler. So these are the responsible for corrective actions when organization faces important unexpected disturbances. Some handling of unions, certain riots, certain upcomings, like he should develop as a leader, as a manager, he should be able to identify these aspects at the subversion stage, not allowing it to accumulate into a high problematic state. Then the resource allocator, responsible for allocating the organizational resources of all kinds in effect, the making of approval of all significant organizational decisions. Then the negotiator, responsible for representing the organizations at major negotiations. So in any project, we do have certain parties dedicated as negotiators. Like when it comes to the manager's decisional role, he should be a good negotiator as well, because he is responsible for representing the organization at major negotiations. So this is very important. There are certain separate subject like negotiation. There are separate mechanism, separate skills, separate certain interpersonal skills that has to be developed by the manager to act as a negotiator. Like during conflict resolutions. So you have to have a good negotiation skills. That is one of the negotiation part of the conflict resolution. Then we come to the leadership. We have completed 50 minutes. We have 1 more hour to go. And do you need a break of 5 minutes? Hello?
Okay, sir.
Just 5-minute breaks. We'll start within 5 minutes. Thank you. Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Leadership, very important. So our subject is manager, engineer as a manager. So when it comes to the leadership, so you will see the relationship that a manager, what kind of managerial skills that he should be competent with. Leadership is very vital role in organization in providing direction and facilitating the process that enable organizations to achieve their goals and objectives. As I told you, the key management function, planning, organizing, leading, controlling. See, the leadership aspect come into all these four basic pillars: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Now, leaders not only direct influence the behavior of members, but their actions also influence the perception of members, which led to norms and expectation of appropriate conduct and become ingrained in the organizational climate. So leadership is not only directing the influence of the behavior of the members, but the actions also influence the perception of members. Like when you are dealing with human resources, your leadership is not only targeted to particular project. Just get this project done, get this outcome, that's finished. No, leadership is not that. Leadership is beyond that. Leadership has the ability to improve, not only the influence, but influence the perception of the group or the members or an individual so that they will carry forward. So therefore, the leadership is very important. Leaders' actions both directly and indirectly establish the ethical tone of the organization. So leaders can negatively or positively inculcate certain concept in their followers. So therefore, ethical tone of the organization is being spelled out by the leader. So that is the leader's responsibility. Therefore, leaders can impact on organizational outcome through either direct means, that is such as formulating corporate level strategy, or by indirect means, such as effectively managing the symbols that help build commitment of employees to organization. So these are two very, very important aspects, my dear students. Now be very mindful. It's very easy to get a work done from a person when you have rules and regulations, when there are certain resources, given tasks. It is, we call it taskmasters in operating environment. We call taskmaster. They just get the work done, but in perfect time, they will get the done. But is it so? The indirect means if you are getting the done, the work, while the people are happy, that is the leadership. It's not only get the work done, finish it, but there are element, the human element, you have to consider whatever the outcome, expected outcome, while achieving that, your organizational main vital component is the human resource. So therefore, you should think about that as well. Now let us see the leadership definition. The process of directing and influencing the task-related activities of group members, the process of moving groups of individuals in a desired direction through largely non-coercive means. Then, in order to do that for a leader, what should have? He should have power. Without power, what can you do? What can you lead without power? You have to have power. According to John French and Bertram Raven, there are certain type of power we call. Right now, we need to identify as a manager. So you should be able to identify what are the powers that you have. If you recollect my first few slides, I have told you have to identify who we are. then who am I? When you are identifying these categories, you have to test with these factors. Do I have reward power? Do I have coercive power? What kind of power my organization has? As a manager, how can I practice this without this power? How can I obtain this power? These are the aspects that you should exactly be very mindful, and you should be measured what power up to what level that you have. Then only you will be able to build up the gaps. Okay. Reward power, the person's ability to reward another person for carrying out orders or meeting performance requirements. Sometimes that reward power is only kept with the higher management. It's not delegated to the lower management or the middle level. Then you cannot sometimes expect the best outcome. Sometimes they don't have reward power at all. Then how can you measure? If they don't have reward power, what else power they have? Suppose coercive power, influencers ability to punish the influence for not meeting requirement. This is mostly, I have put in the red color because this mostly not to be used, but this is a power. This is a power, influencers ability to punish. But as a manager, we have to utilize this power in a minimum manner, coercive power. When you are dealing with human resources, not machines, when you are dealing with human resources, it is very important to keep their hearts and minds intact in a very lovable manner to your organization, to yourself as a leader, as a manager, to yourself. Therefore, use of coercive power, you have to keep it to the last moment. Then legitimate power. The legitimate power exists when subordinates acknowledge that the influencer is entitled to exert influence within certain bounds. It is also important that the influencer has no obligation to accept this power. Legitimate power is already written. When you are joining for the company itself, all the employers, it is written, given, and accepted. So it is there. The expert power is based on the perception of belief of that influencer has some relevant expertise or special knowledge that influencer doesn't have. As a manager, as a leader, these are the things that you have to develop expert power. Okay, with your experience, work experience, then reading books and reading other projects, and especially when you go through the lesson learned of every project, you will gather this expert power. When you are gathering this power and you are practicing with this power with your subordinates, then they will start acknowledging you, respecting you. Then as a leader and manager, it is very easy for you to drive all these individuals and group towards the right direction where the organizational goals will meet. Then the referent power is based on the influences desire to identify with more, imitate with the influencer. Leaders' ability to inspire and influence others. By this is called like charismatic leadership. They have the referent power, but by talking, by looking at, they have this power. This has to be developed by an individual. Certain things are born, certain things are made. Leaders' roles vary in terms of the level of the organization. Carson, Kahn, and Mintzberg have noted the qualitatively different nature of managerial and leaders' role across the levels in the same vein. Day and Lord claims that leadership at lower levels is qualitatively different from upper level leadership. As I told, we have discussed the manager's role there, the same like manager as a leader, then they have to practice the strategic level, the middle level, the operational level, the lower level, and the tactical level. These roles are invaried. Then leaders, the top level create organizational structure, formulate policy, and develop corporate strategy. Middle level leaders interpret the elaborate structure, policy, and strategy as I told. Lower level are the tactical level leaders, technical knowledge, rewards, and sanctions of administer, like we call it line managers. So line managers should have that level of skill as a leader. In the same context, Webster contends that the corporate level leaders define what business the company in determine the mission, vision, and shape and structure of the firm. We have discussed the top management. Then the business until level leaders determine the orientation the firm adopts to compete, including the particular core competencies developed at the functional level of achieved competitive advantage. That is operational level. That is the functional level. Then functional leaders facilitate the creation of specific capabilities that contribute to core competence, like vertical specialization in that particular subject matter. Then I will quickly go through the leadership approaches. There are trait approach, behavioral approach, and contingency approach, which will be benefited for you all as students, as managers, when you are developing your competencies in future. When you go through the internet, you can read a lot of material. There are good books on this, and it's good to know certain examples and knowing all these theories. And I believe after this lecture, you will be able to hunt the knowledge on this aspect. But sincerely, I request from all of you not just to read for writing the B paper. It's not going to work for you, for your life. So this reading should be able to practically apply for your day-to-day life, in your family, with your relations, with your friends, and with your working environment, with your university, wherever it is. So therefore, your learning should be able to practically implemented in your working environment in a very positive manner. Trait approach evolved from great man's theory. That is, great man theory says brighter, more extroverted, self-confident, assertive, sociability, and self-confidence dominance. That means great man theory says the leaders are born, not made. They said it has to be a leader, born leader. Traits approach concerned with identifying the personal traits of a leader. In searching for measurable leadership traits, researchers have taken two approaches. Compare the traits of those who have emerged as leaders with the traits of those who have not. Compare the traits of effective leaders with those of ineffective leaders. This is how it has been developed. Then the behavioral approach. Look at the behavior of leaders and how it might contribute to leadership success or failure. Leadership functions, task-related or problem-solving, group maintenance and social functions. Then leadership styles, task-oriented, as I told you, employee-oriented. So we have discussed this. Then leadership traits refer to personal qualities that define effective leaders. So this is one key area you can read in the net. What are the traits that a leader should have? He should be effective communicator, self-motivated, people-oriented, emotionally stable, and he should be accountable and responsible for his work. If you analyze what is happening in our world today in Sri Lanka and this part of the world, in third world countries, where we are lacking, we'll identify all these things. So as a future generations, it is for you all to identify, read, develop these skills as leaders and pass on to your succeeding generations. Then a bad leader is a true bossy. He just act as a boss, fearful of change. He doesn't like to change, unable to communicate effectively. He doesn't have empathy and no consistency, and also he doesn't take any decisions. Another important aspect I am touching upon, the motivation. What is motivation? Let us see the definition. It's a set of forces that cause people to behave in certain ways. It is a human physiological characteristic that contribute to person's degree of commitment. The driving force within individual that impels them to actions. This driving force is produced by a state of tension, which exists as a result of an unfulfilled need. Positive and negative motivation. Motivation can be positive or negative in direction. We may feel a driving force towards some object or condition, or driving force away from some object or conditions. So we should know exactly to which direction to drive or motive your subordinate. Let us see the contemporary views of motivation. The content theory, what motivates people. Then Maslow's hierarchy of need, you must have not all those who has done part of management at least, they should be able to know this. And then the Erg theory and two-factor theory of motivation. I will just glance through these things in my next few slides. So these are physiological needs: hunger, thirst, shelter, sex, etc. Everybody needs. Safety need, security and protection. Social need, affection, belongingness, acceptance, and friendship. Then the esteem needs, self-respect, autonomy, recognition, self-actualization, what one is capable of becoming. Let's see how Maslow has layered these aspects. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs tell basic psychological needs is the first. In the ancient people, like Vedas, they did have basic, what they wanted is the basic and physiological needs. Then step into the safety and security need. Then step onto the social need. Then step into the esteem or the ego need in a particular person. Then the self-actualization need. Like the highest person we know who has actualized the self-actualization is, for me, it's Lord Buddha. So like what happened nowadays in our society where we do life? Do we have self-actualization in the current society, in the present situation? Do we have the esteem need, ego need? Do we have the social needs? Do we have the safety and security? Where we are falling? So are we going back to search for the basic and physiological needs like shelter, food? So if somebody is just only looking for food and shelter, so we are in the basic need here. Two-factor theory is the Friedrich Herzberg's factors that lead to job dissatisfaction, security, company policy and administration, supervision, relationship with supervisors, work conditions, salary, relationship with peers. These are the factors that lead to job dissatisfaction. Let us see how this Friedrich Herzberg has rated this one. Factors that lead to job satisfaction: achievements, work itself, responsibilities, recognition, advancement, growth. These are some of the things that you have to think about how to increase this part in your organization as a manager. Going back to that, how to decrease this dissatisfaction part. If it's insecurity, then problem. Then company and policy administration is not very safe or conducive for them. Then supervision, relationship with supervisors, all these things, it can drive towards the negative direction. Two-factor theory, like hygiene factors and motivational factors, which I have discussed earlier was hygiene factors. Motivational factors are the other one. So from dissatisfaction to satisfaction, drive. So no satisfaction and no dissatisfaction. So here, if you see, neither dissatisfaction, no satisfaction for this person at this level. Okay. From here, you start motivational factors toward the satisfaction. As a manager, as a leader, again, as an engineer, you have, when you are building your competencies to work as an engineer, as a manager, you have to identify all these aspects and drive towards from dissatisfaction to satisfied direction through increase of motivational factors and decrease of hygiene factors. These are, in theory, after a lot of research, this has been identified by the scholars and expertise. Then ERG theory, a theory of job motivation that says people strive to meet hierarchy of existence and relatedness and growth. These are the three things, ERG, existence, relatedness, and growth needs. If efforts to reach one level of needs are frustrated, individuals will regress to a lower level. So out of these three, if one cannot be achieved, they will just step down to the other level and live with it. The existence is these three. These are connected with survival. Physiological needs, even the Maslow's, the basic level need. Then relatedness means the maintaining interpersonal and social relationship is like the loving your affiliations, etc. Then growth is the need for personal creativity or positive influence. That is the growth. So this is ERG theory. Now we put all these three theories into one chart and see Herzberg's two-factor theory, Maslow's hierarchy theory, and Alfred ERG's theories. So motivators and hygiene factors, these are the pillars of Maslow, and these are the ERG theory factors. So I will leave it to you. You can compare and go through later. Then the process theories, expectancy theory, a theory of motivation that says that people choose how to behave from among alternative causes of behavior based on their expectation of what they are in to gain for each behavior. These assumptions are behavior determined by a combination of factors in individual and factors in the environment, then make concise decision about their behavior in the organization. Individuals have different needs, different desires, different goals. Individuals decide between alternative behaviors on the basis of their expectation that a given behavior will lead to a desired outcome. So having learned all these things, what can I recommend for the managers? Let's go through. Determine the reward values by each employee. I told you, you have to determine the rewards valued by each employee. Determine the performance you desire. Make the performance level attainable. Whatever you are setting up your targets, those performance should be attainable. So at least, I would say not 100, at least 90%, 80 to 90% should be attainable. Because when you go to the ISO standard, they said at least 90%. So you can decide. Nowadays, even 80% achievement is somewhat good. Link the reward to performance. Always this performance linked to the rewards. So these are coming to the organization in a intangible manner. This feedbacks and the effectiveness of your human resources when you reward the performances. So you will see the difference. So analyze what factors might counteract the effectiveness of the rewards. Also analyze what factors might counteract the effectiveness of the rewards. So we have to be tactful. Make sure the rewards is adequate. Then decision making. I'll just quickly glance through this decision making process for your benefit. I have given this one. As a manager, as a leader, as an engineer, as a human being, as an individual, decision making is always involved. Like if you are walking from A to B, if you have 5 miles to go from here to some city, you will mentally consider a lot of things. You don't know, you are already considered distance, weather on then the mode of traveling, then activities that you will be doing in between, your security aspect, you dress that you wear, and finally reaching the end, and whether you have done your aim when you go there. Likewise, that is called mental appreciations. When you do the mental appreciation, you all do these things day-to-day life. So likewise, when we consider any decision making, this aim is the number one, you will set it. What is your aim? So FASA means factors affecting selection of aim. So what are the factors affecting of selection of aim? You have to consider all the factors. These factors should be factually correct. And each factor you should consider and deduct for its effectiveness. When you consider big factors, a lot of factors are there in a project management like subject, when you are taking certain decision making. So you have to consider all the factors. Then considering all those factors, then course of actions, not only limited to one course of action, means how to achieve, the way of achievement. If you are to do this task, do this project as an manager, as an engineer, so there might be not only one way, there might be 2, 3, 4 possible manner. But you have to list it out, all the possible manner, with this, without this, with additionally with this all are involved with time factor, resource allocation, and the effectiveness. And other part is the customer's requirement and on your own requirement. So this already spelled out the aim. So in order to reach this aim, you have few possible ways. Out of that, again, after listing that, you are selecting the best course of action. Then go for the plan and the implementation. Again, even though I said within 2 minutes these things, it's a huge process. The huge process. This involving huge work. Like if you take a big project, it's years of analysis. Certain things, months of analysis, collecting data, producing every course of action, then selecting the best course of action. Now you see, as a managers, as engineers, when you walk around the world or this part of the world, third world countries, you see a lot of projects are halfway just hanging. Because sometimes during this decision-making process, planning process, certain things are not considered accurately. And when this implementation comes, so it has to be achievable target. Then your resource allocation from A to Z, result allocation, the availability of resource means funds also. Really, funds matters. You are planning some project, but without any sufficient budget for completion of the project. Likewise, when you are doing smaller matter, as I told you, walking from town, 5 kilometers from here to there, engineer thinking about without knowingly. Likewise, in a bigger scale, you have to think about a big project, tasking separate groups for certain elements. You have to gather data. That is why we are doing the feasibility study. When you are doing some feasibility study, it's considered a lot. It is not easy task. And after that, taking the deductions has to be very accurate and methodical and justifiable. After the deduction, you come out with the proper course of actions and go for the best course of action, plan it and implement it so that your project will be able to implement in a correct manner. Then I'll quickly move on to the communication, and again, very important aspect of our managerial position. If you are not a good communicator, you will see what will happen. Level of communicating according to the type of activities performed. For an engineer graduate, this is defined in International Engineering Alliances. You must have gone through. If you have not gone through, just refer the Washington Accord 9. Communicate effectively and inclusively on complex engineering activities with the engineering community and with society at large, such as being able to comprehend and write effective reports, as I told you, and design documentation, make effective presentations, taking into account cultural, language, learning differences, all these things. Now you see this WA9 encompasses these 4 sentences, the four lines, what we have discussed so far, isn't it? So for an engineering graduate, so it has already spelled out what we have discussed. This is encompasses all these things. So if you are, in order to be a good engineer and a manager, so you must have these communication skills developed. Effective communication, the process of sending a message in such a way that the message received is as close in meaning as possible to the message in deed. Effective communicator is receiver oriented, not media oriented. Today, a lot of people are talking about media oriented. Just they tell what they like to tell. Is it not what they really wanted to communicate? So, lot of distortion effect. Then, this is the basic diagram, communication process. Idea of feelings, encoding message, decoding idea of feeling. In early hour stages, when we want to tell a girl that we love, we have the idea of emotions, then we write it, the message in letters and send it, not like now emails or SMS or other electronic means. What you do now, like there can be a lot of noise in between which will distract. You are writing your letter, giving to your friend to deliver, whether you don't know whether it is delivered in correct time, correct manner, because noise can be added. Likewise, communication process is very important as a manager, from top level to manager. Imagine in your family, there are maybe 5-6 people, but when it comes to the organization, there are hundreds of people from top management to lowest element. This communication has to be processed very correctly. Encoding has to be proper, then the decoding has to be proper in order to receive it, and response and feedback is very important. Noise, my dear student, always this is present. No noise environment is very difficult to find. It's always present. In any environment, this is present, but we have to minimize, we have to identify. Okay. Then the functions of communication in management. Let us see how this management is being affected by the communication. According to the Scott and Michelle, communication solves 4 major functions with the group organization: control, motivate, emotional expressions, and information. Control is the organization has authority, hierarchic, and formal guidelines that employees are required to follow. Motivations clarify to employees what is to be done, how well they are to be done, and what can be done to improve performance if it is subpar. So whatever we learn, we have to be communicated properly. Emotional expression. For many employees, their workplace is a primary source of social interaction. People think, lot of leaders or the managers in the top hierarchical people think that they just come for their work and go. No, not only that. If you consider the lower element, the workplace is the place there where they socially interact. The communication that take place within the group is a fundamental mechanism by which members show their frustration. Sometimes they criticize. Criticism is sometimes constructive criticism or destructive criticism. It can be. Okay, but the place is the working place. There should be able to criticize these things other than going to any other place. And feelings of satisfaction. Communication therefore provides the release for the emotional expressions of feelings and for fulfillments of social needs. Sometimes they go and criticize the leaders, criticize the managers on their own organization, but that is a release for them. So, but you need to identify that. Information, it plays a big role in facilitating decision making. It provides the information that individuals and groups need to make decisions by transmitting the data to identify the evaluate alternative choices. The four regions of information known as and known known and not known by self and others. I think this diagram will help you to identify what will be the effectiveness of your communication. Unknown to self, you don't know. Unknown by others, they don't know. You don't know, they don't know. Then both don't know. This is the unknown area. You don't know by they know. This is the blind spot because you don't know. Self doesn't, it's blind to you. Then known by self, you know, but they don't know. This is called false front, facet. Then this area is the arena that you have to work on. You know, they know. Known by yourself as well as known by others. So every manager and a leader should be able to work towards this arena in this square. This is the effective communication. So less feedback in this direction, then less exposure this direction. Okay. When you have less feedback, it will move this direction, less exposure this direction. So you have to have good feedback and good exposure to work in this arena. Right. Communication, quickly, I will tell these are basics, verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Sometimes we don't know. You don't know what is non-verbal communication. If you're a good manager, good leader, if you have good interpersonal skill, you don't have to wait and, write an email or write a letter to communicate somebody. You call that particular subordinate employee, the line manager or, other lower level managers and tell. Don't tell. Just by visiting you, by your looks, by one of your way of looking at your eyes, they will realize what you expect. Okay? What you will not expect sometimes. Then if not, you use the verbal communication. Verbal communication is oral and written. In writing, you can give it. In oral, you can do it. In oral communication, you need your communication skills, your vocabulary, type of language that you use, and also the language that you use for that culture. When you go from one part of the world and another part of the world, they don't understand your the way that you talk. Even in Sri Lanka, different provinces, the language that they use is different. Okay. These are the forms of communication. What are the barriers to effective communication? It is very good to know what are the barriers to effective communication. Differing frame of reference. Individuals can interpret the same communication differently based on their experience. So the result is in variation in according to the decoding process. When the encoding and decoding process are alike, communication is most effective. As I told you, if the decoding and encoding, as in the engineering aspect also, we call the ciphering or the secure codes we put from both them. If it's the encoding and decoding are same, I think our telecommunication students might know very well on these things, and the process is very easy and it is identified. Otherwise, it is distorted. When they are different, communication tend to break. Then communication overload is too much of communication. Then emotional reaction, anger, love, defensiveness, hate, jealousy, fear, embarrassment, such as those things. I think these are self-explanatory. I will not go into detail on this because of the time. We have another 15 minutes. I try to finish all the slides which I have prepared for you all. Then improving communication, two separate tasks, improve message, the information they wish to transmit, improve one's understanding of what other people are trying to communicate to them. One must become better encoder and decoder. In communication, the manager and the leader should be a good listener. Techniques for improving communication, following up, attempting to determine whether you intended to meaning was actually received, regulating information flow, that idea is based on the expectation principles of management, the techniques of ensure the optimum flow of information to managers, thereby eliminating the barriers of communication overload, utilization of feedback. Just see always, every control system, we have the feedback, no, otherwise it will not work. Likewise, in the communication, you are in the key management functions, planning, organizing, leading and controlling. Controlling process required the utilizing this feedback module. So communication is very important, like automation systems, like any other engineering aspect, like even the human aspect, you require communication so that you will be able to effectively communicate to the low elements. So you need to get the feedback. Then empathy towards the your subordinate. You have to improve the ability of put oneself in the other person's role and to assume the viewpoint of emotions of their person. අපි සිංහලෙන් කියනවා එයාගේ කකුල් දෙකට බෑලා එයාගේ සපත්තු දෙකට ගහලා බලන්න එතකොට ප්‍රොබ්ලම් එක ඒ පැත්තෙන් පේ. You see the problem or any issue from his point of view, because then only you will recognize. Then simplifying language. ලොකු ලොකු වචන දාන්න නැතුව the way that they can understand. This is very important. Like you know what is happening in the world. Lot of big words are put in the language. Even the minor people, they don't understand. Then the effective listener, as I told you, you should be a good listener. Okay. Now communication, I will leave it you to read more aspect on those key elements towards your development. Actually, you have to develop. Not reading will not is not going to help you only, but you have to practically utilize like best way of communicating what the theorists and scholars said is talk to a small person, then you will lot of your interpersonal skills will develop. Learn those things and talk with a small person, a kid, then you will be able to develop lot of skills, and then after developing you will be able to apply the same theory, same skills, same practice into other adults as well. This I found this topic for you. I thought that will be very useful to you all. Perceptual distortion. Mostly managers, mostly leaders, they get distorted or they get failed. Their plans, their implementation, their project, their aims, their objectives, their strategies fail because of these four aspects. So I thought of putting across to you all to understand what is perceptual distortion. Perceptual distortion happens when the stated view differs from the ordinary. Ordinary reaction. This is a component of individual contrast. For instance, in perceptual styles and in theoretical, not the same as mental trips and optical dreams. As recognition relies upon the perceiver's present perspective, part and conception. There could simply be mistakes in the explanation. Therefore, engineer or leader should not be mistaken in interpreting someone else. So your recognition, your perception on that particular person or particular type of task, particular type of project outcome should be perceived correctly. Let us see, there are 4 types of perceptual distortions. So when you have this perceptual distortion, one is called stereotyping. It is about putting away general data about social gathering, race, sex, age, nationalities, political association, physical or mental capacity. Stereotyping means if you have this type of perceptual distortion, so an essential part of this is that they regularly contain data about stable identity attributes. Stereotyping enables us to anticipate conduct since they encode relationship between social classification, circumstances, or practice. For an example, it is often said that men are the earning members of the family and that women are the only men they are meant for household work. These are very common, but in practically it is not so. Perceptually distorted, but if someone tell that group is like that, this group is like that, they are meant for that, but it is not so when you are really look into the matter. Then second one is the halo effect. This halo effect is the way whereby we accept that since individuals are great at completing tasks A, they will be great at doing B, C, and D also. As a manager, you think last time also you did a good project. Okay, I think this time also you can do the same project, same other project also like, but without going into detail, you cannot tell that. So there can be some distortion of this effect. Therefore, you need to analyze all the type of requirements that you need to assign before that. The expression was first created by Edward Thorndike, a psychologist who utilized it is an examination distributed in 1920 or portrayed that the way that bosses appraise their officers. Always, sometimes they think they are good, but sometimes they are not good because they have changed. It's based on the past experience or what they have done at certain tasks, they praise them. This effect can be seen in real world where the halo effect impacts how instructors treat students, as well as affect how students see instructors. So there can be distortion like this. Last time they have done very well, the students, sometimes same student will not do this time correct in a good manner, because you cannot have the same effect. So therefore, throughout the time and the environment, there can be some distortion. Therefore, halo effect can be there. You have to be careful. Then selective perception is the procedure by which one sees what he or she feels is correct, totally disregarding the contradictory perspective. At the end of the day, she sees the things that as they wish to see and not what the real picture is. They see the way that they want to see. This often happens in real life, where when someone comes and tells you good deeds about the third person and mention only one flaw, we tend to ignore all the positive aspect and concentrate on the negative aspect. Sometimes they told, right, they always see in the negative aspect. It is not so. So selective perception, don't get caught to this, because you are a leader, you are a manager, you have to observe the behavior of these people, group of people, you really analyze, collect data, and after a certain period, you go for your own judgment. Then you perceive in a correct manner. Otherwise, this perceptual distortion exists. Don't get caught to that. Then you interpret it in a different and incorrect manner. Third one, the fourth one is the projection. It is a type of mechanism in which undesirable emotions are uprooted into someone's life. A typical type of projection happens when an individual, undermined by his own furious emotions, blames another for harboring unfriendly contemplation. For an example, a husband who has hostile nature might attribute this hostility to his wife, and she says an anger management problem. You have the problem. You are very emotionally, very furious, and you think as a manager that person also like that. It is not so. You are projecting your own qualities to another individual. So this is also a type of perceptual distortion. So I think all the students might work on this, identify on this throughout your practical career in any place. This can happen. So even today, everybody get this perceptual distortion. So best way is recognize and try to minimize it. Zeroing is very difficult. With your experience, you will get more, but try to minimize this. So then you have effective perception. And I have come to the last 5 minutes of my presentation. And this is what is our topic? Engineer and a manager. So we have done certain things, engineer and a manager. We have seen through engineering aspect, who's an engineer, then who's a manager, what managers required, what are the qualities like leadership, communication, motivation, so many other qualities, traits required by a manager to practically build the competencies as required by the engineering practitioner. I hope the trigger I have mentioned, you can follow. This is a subject that you just can't read, write, and forget it. This is a subject where you have to practically implement throughout your life, your own life, your with your partner, with your family, with your colleagues, with your organization. These are the things as a practitioner continue to be developed. This is ever developing qualities, and whoever like technological advancement, we are developing the engineering aspect, also this managerial aspect throughout the life you will be developing. So earlier the better. So that is my advice for you all, not limiting to the paper, just learn these things and also educate your youngsters, the future generations, for their benefit, for the country's benefit. So I have selected this topic, especially I hope, sincerely believe all these participants will learn something on this managerial aspect and leadership aspect and do something for this country effectively to build this country to a step-by-step higher level. As you all know, the condition that we are in now. So my contribution towards this effect is to educate you all and request humbly for you all to learn these things, practice these things, and develop the environment in this country, in your society, to have a very fruitful and achievable goals in your organization. So this is the ultimate requirement of this. And thank you very much for your patient listening. I think I was able to complete within 2 hours. If you all have any questions, any queries, you all can raise now even. I will wait for another 5 minutes for this one. And also I have given my email. You all can post any question to that email, any clarifications, any requirement, any assistance. If you need to get it from me, I am open anytime. So that is from my part. And if you all have any question, please come up now. Thank you.